So a little bit about myself. I'm Donna Fordyce. I'm the interim head of Seafood Scotland, and we are the trade marketing body for Scotland. Some of you may know me. I send out the seafood COVID updates twice a week now. They were daily, down to twice a week. And Seafood Scotland and myself are also part of the Scottish Seafood Training Network. So Scottish Seafood Training Network, what is that? So it's to signpost training opportunities to the onshore fish and shellfish sector in Scotland, to encourage skills development and careers progression, to seek funding to support training needs, and to promote cooperation in the provision of fish and shellfish training across Scotland, and to provide a voice to fish and shellfish employers in Scotland over training issues. Now, there are a number of partners within the Scottish Seafood Training Network, and that includes trainers, employers, colleges and industry representatives. Moving on, we are looking at the Covid-19 and the impact that that has had within the seafood industry, and the reason why we're here today to talk about how this has impacted the sector. We know that it was the hardest hit, the quickest, and it's probably the longest to come out with all of the within food and drink in Scotland. So we see that very many premises close initially. A lot of staff were furloughed. The majority have reopened, but again, markets are still not fully opened. You know, food service in the UK is still closed. There's very little happening in Europe within food service. So there's not full production yet at the moment in many of the facilities. So we want to make sure that people are prepared as best as they can, the companies that they are following all the guidelines that are necessary to be in a post-COVID-19 industry. We've seen COVID-19 scares in China under the salmon. So with the salmon industry, they were hit with a scare a couple of weeks ago, saying that there was evidence that from the chopping board of salmon, there was evidence of COVID-19, which removed salmon across the whole of China's shelves. And we've now got the Chinese authorities picking 6 companies throughout the world to do spot audit checks on. So 2 from the UK, 2 from Australia and 2 from Denmark. So we do have 1 Scottish company, and so they had notice on Friday that this week they will be getting a video audit to be able still to supply into China. So we also have the scare in England and Wales under food manufacturing, and also in Germany, and we're seeing a lot more cases coming. So I think in the chicken factory down in Wales, in the Two Sisters plant, there's over 200 COVID-19 positive cases, with a large number now self-isolating as well. And whilst precautions have been taken in the factories, it certainly seems like it's more of outside the factories as well that employers are having to look at to make sure that the commute, the travel to work, you know, where people are staying, etc. as well, is where the risk seems to lie more greatly than in the factory setting when everything has been put in place. And lastly is be prepared for audit from customers, like you're seeing in China. You know, we will be seeing more and more of if your customers cannot physically come up and talk to you, they may ask for video audits to look around your factory, your premises to make sure, or they might ask for paperwork, etc., to prove that you're actually fit for purpose in this crisis. So there are areas of help and where you can find a lot of information. Now there is a lot of information, and that's why through my updates as well, I try and hone in on what's relevant information. Now in Scotland, we are guided by the Food Standards Scotland guidance, and that is updated regularly as and when any changes made from Scottish Government, because as we know, we're different guidelines to the rest of the UK. There's also the contact tracing guidelines, which is becoming more important as well. Seafish have a fantastic resource as well of a lot of information on what manufacturers and companies should be doing to address the COVID-19 situation within production. And the Scottish Seafood Association as well have pulled together a lot of really relevant information, and that's looking at business practices, continuity planning, policies and checklists. So at the end there will be a link to the Scottish Seafood Training Network where all of the links to all of this information will be. So before I push it on to Helen, just to say that after Helen spoke, there will be a Q&A, and they'll be joined by some of the training providers as well. So prior to the lockdown, we'd had a programme of activity pulled together for training. We'd been given some funding from Skills Development Scotland to help with rural skills. And just as we were about to undertake all of that, we approached lockdown. And so we've reviewed all of that. The training providers have been working really hard and looking at how they could do new online learning, but really as a blended learning. So a lot around Zoom, etc. So there's a new programme in place as well around that. So you'll be able to see that on the Scottish Seafood Training Network, and you'll be able to ask questions of the training providers after this as well. And I'd like to hand you over to the chairman of the Scottish Seafood Training Network, Helen Muir.
Thank you, Donna. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Helen Muir, and I'm HR Director at Dawnfresh, and I've been HR Director there for the last 11 years. And I'm also delighted to say that I am the chair of the Scottish Seafood Training Network, and I've been the chair there since the network was started. What I was asked to do today was talk to you about what Dawnfresh have done to remain open and operational during the pandemic. But more importantly, it was about also delivering quality products to all of our customers, as well as making sure that everything we do and everything we're about to do was about our employee safety, and it was about employees' well-being. And we did this, and also through adhering to all of the government guidelines. So very briefly, there we are. So who's Dawnfresh? Dawnfresh is an independent Scottish business. It's owned by Alistair Salveson. We currently employ just over 620 employees, and we recruit up to about 150 seasonal workers during the year. We are the largest supplier of fresh trout in the UK, as well as a key supplier of salmon products to nearly all of the major retailers in the UK, and we have a very large global market as well. So what did we do? How did we go about this? Well, the first step that we took was to undertake a risk assessment. And that risk assessment identified 4 key pillars that we wanted to look at, and we thought we need to manage our business risk. We really need to manage our people and make sure they're safe. We have to manage our processes, because the processes we currently had wouldn't have been fit for purpose to allow social distancing. And then what have we ended up with? Well, we've ended up with a new Dawnfresh. So to help us form an action plan, we put together what we called our Covid-19 response team. And that team met around about mid-Feb, but certainly before the end of February. And there we looked at the 4 pillars, and then we took each one in turn and decided what is it we need to do under each one. The COVID team consists of our leadership team, and it's multi-site and multifunctional. And we meet daily. We meet over virtual meetings, and there we review our business risks, we review our processes, we review health and safety, we review any concerns that any of our employees may have, and we also review the government guidance, because that is constantly being updated and it changes very frequently. And before end of each week, what we do is we agree what the business communication is going to be. And every week we send out a business communication to every single employee about what we've done, why we've done it, what the government guidelines are, and what we're planning to do for the following week. And we let them know also what the position is about the business performance, because I think it's very important at such a time of panic and uncertainty that our employees knew that we were continuing to do well in business and we were continuing to supply our customers. We also monitored at these daily meetings, we monitored all of our absence, and during that absence register, we also monitored what was COVID related, because it's very important to understand how it may be impacting on our business. And we did have some high numbers in the very early days, and I think that was due to panic and uncertainty again and fear. But after a couple of weeks, our absence returned to normal. After about 4 weeks, our absence was way below normal. I think people preferred to come to work and stay at home with all the kids by that time who were off school, etc. So we also created an employee hub, and in that hub we invited representatives from all of our productions and logistic functions, as well as some of the management team. And their function was to walk around the business. Their function was to look at what we needed to change, go and view it the following day or that same day and check it was working well, and to also help us train out the employees and make sure they understood all the changes we're making were working. We also ensured that we had constant employee recognition, because I think that was very important. So it wasn't just about listening and empathizing and reacting quickly, but it was really important that we had this employee recognition, and we had frequent thank yous generally at the end of a week in all of our sites, very small thank yous, but it's very important you recognize your employees and thank them, you know, for coming to work during such uncertain times. And we also supported our employees with our occupational health providers. And we had quite a number of employees who were shielding and self-isolating. So we asked our occupational health nurses to make sure that they were phoning all of our employees were shielding or self-isolating every single week and checked on their well-being and how they were doing. So what was key to all of this? Well, clear, transparent, regular communication was absolutely the linchpin in this. We feel that you could never over communicate. We communicated what we were changing. We used as many visual aids as possible, because that was really important, because we have a multilingual workforce. So I would advise everybody to make sure that your comms are as visual as you possibly can do. And then we trained everything out as well, because training was also key to our success in continuing to be able to operate during the pandemic. And we also looked at what other PPE we needed as well. But there were so many different methods of communication channels, from virtual meetings, and we even had virtual weekly team get-togethers where a lot of our teams got together either on a Thursday just after work hours or a Friday after work hours, and had virtual social meetings just to keep the team spirit going and to keep in touch with everyone, and that worked well as well. So hygiene was really high on our list. We're a food manufacturing company. It's always key to everything we do. However, we said, what else do we need to do? So we increased all our sanitizing stations. They were at every entrance, every exit of every door. They were at the clock machines. We put them into every office. And then we said, right, what else do we need to do? Well, we had to change the line speeds because we were reducing staff due to social distancing. And then we looked at how do we achieve the social distancing? What PPE do we need to do? Is our PPE adequate? In some cases it wasn't in certain areas of our business, in certain of our zones. So there we introduced visors, masks where necessary, and snoods. And then we got our engineering team to go around the site, both internally and externally, and make sure we marked out the 2-meter markings across the site, as I say, internally and externally. And this was really good for just reminding people and helping people not get too close to their colleagues. We also reviewed all our documentation. So our visitors, we reduced all visitors to only critical visitors on any of our sites. but we also reviewed our visitors' forms to include 4 COVID-19 questions and answers. We looked at our fitness to work declaration, our return to work forms. So there was many different pieces of documentation that we had to change and update to be in line with social distancing and to make sure we understood where our employees had been prior to coming to work, returning from work, or any visitors coming on site. And you can see here in the bottom left where we've even put screens, perfect screens up at our reception to keep our reception safe should anyone call on any of our sites. So I've mentioned earlier that we did some increased levels of PPE, and we also increased the frequency of how often our people would change with their PPE. So at every break, our employees were able to get into fresh PPE. And yes, you'll be saying that must have been expensive, it came at a cost, yeah, but we were able to continue operating, and that was important. So what else did we do? What did we do specifically in our production areas, where our engineering team added a lot more perspex screenings to give us a lot of extra security on our production lines. And we also put screens in between operatives and production lines where the 2 meters was really difficult to achieve. And I'll show you a photograph of that shortly. We staggered a lot of our shift times, and we had to stagger all our break times to reduce the number of movement going in and out of our canteens, along our corridors, etc. We reduced the seating in our canteen, only 2 people per table. Now you must be wondering how we managed to get everybody in breaks, but obviously we'd reduced breaks. But then we decided to relax the rule, and we allowed our employees to eat in their car, but only 1 person per car. We had to introduce additional shifts, as I've said, and all of our office-based employees who were working from home ended up on a rota basis as well. So that reduced the number of movement that was on site, and that helped us to manage the social distancing. And here you can see a photograph in our gutting line of where we have individual perspex screens between every employee to keep them safe. And that, again, our employees really come back to us with very positive feedback about all the measures that we had taken to ensure their safety so that they could continue working and earning as well. So what did we do with all the support staff, all the office staff? Well, the bulk of them are all working from home and still are. And we put a lot of our teams on rotas to make sure we reduced the number of people in our offices. And we also, our engineering team, fitted perspex screens between desks. And again, so that when we have the reduced number in, they still feel safe as well when they're sitting opposite their colleagues, although at the moment they're sitting diagonally opposite. There aren't 2 people sitting directly opposite anyone at the moment. We made sure the people that were working from home had all the right equipment, they had the right IT equipment, they had anything they needed, screens, etc. And we also carried out DSE assessments, again, for their safety. And we have moved all of our meetings to virtual meetings other than our production meetings, but these are also held in, there's more production meetings, but much less people in them, again, to achieve that social distancing. So how did we end up? Where have we ended up? Well, we've ended up with a new Dawnfresh. Our virtual audits are by the major UK retailers. These are now being announced, but they are virtual. They're no longer coming on site. Now that will change as the social distancing and the lockdown eases, but at the moment, we have already done a couple of virtual audits, and it was a really different experience, but it worked well. We have a very flexible approach now to how we work, and our product development continues. It's never stopped. We're still innovating and creating new products and working with retailers. However, we're sending the samples to the technicians' homes now rather than into head offices. What has that meant for the business? Well, we've had to create many more samples because we're posting samples to several technologists' homes rather than one set off to the retailers. However, I think what it has done, it's made us more agile. We certainly use technology much more, And a lot of these changes, yes, at a cost, but as I've said, we're still operating. And more importantly, we've kept all of our employees in a job and we've kept them safe.